Torn lived alone on the edge of a forgotten world. The planet was dry, with sharp rocks, rusty soil, and silent skies. It had no cities, no trees, no sounds, only wind and dust. Torn had made a small shelter in the cliffs, using old metal, sheets and solar panels from crashed ships. He wasn't a soldier or a hero. He was just a scavenger. He looked for old tech, broken machines, or anything left behind by travelers who passed through. One evening, while sitting near his radio tower, Torn saw something strange in the sky. A streak of blue fire cut across the clouds. It wasn't a falling star. It was too big, too fast, and left a burning trail behind. The ground shook a little when it hit. A small cloud of dust rose far away. Near the hills in the west. Torn stood up, narrowed his eyes, and grabbed his old scope. Through the lens, he saw a crater deep and wide. Something had fallen, and whatever it was, it didn't look like metal. It looked like armor. Curious, Torn packed his tools, filled his water bottle, and started walking. He didn't know why he was going. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe he hoped to find something valuable. Or maybe it was something else, something pulling at his heart. It took him 2 hours to reach the crater. The ground was cracked, and smoke still rose from the edges. In the center, half buried in ash and broken rocks, was a figure, a tall armored being, motionless. Torn stepped closer. The armor was sleek and smooth, not like anything he had seen before. It was silver blue with dark lines across it, almost like a second skin. The helmet was cracked. A soft light blinked slowly near the chest plate. He crouched beside the figure and touched the armor. It was warm. He leaned in and heard a faint sound like breathing. Not steady, but real. The figure was alive. Torn acted without thinking. He dug around the figure with his hands, brushing away dirt and ash. The body was heavy, but he managed to free the arms and legs. When he tried to lift her, his muscles strained. She was tall, strong even while unconscious. But Torn didn't stop. He pulled her up slowly, step by step, until she rested against his back. Then, using all his strength, he began walking home. The journey back was harder. His legs shook. His back hurt. Sweat ran down his face. Still, he moved forward. He didn't ask who she was, or what she had done. He only knew one thing: he couldn't leave her there alone. As he neared his shelter, the ground gave a low rumble. Torn looked behind. They were coming, from the sky and from the hills. They arrived, strange soldiers in black, reflective armor. Their boots hit the ground with soft thuds, and their faces were hidden behind smooth helmets. Dozens of them, maybe more. Torn froze. The soldiers didn't raise their weapons. They didn't shout. Instead, they formed a line in front of him. One of them stepped forward, looked at the woman on his back, and then did something unexpected. He knelt. One by one, the others followed. They lowered themselves to the ground, heads bowed, weapons resting beside them. Torn blinked, confused. "What are you doing?" he asked. No one answered. He looked down at the woman he carried. Her helmet light blinked faster now. Maybe they thought he was someone important. Maybe they believed he had done something sacred. "I'm just trying to help," he said aloud, not sure who he was talking to. The lead soldier stood again and gestured toward Torn's shelter. Then he stepped aside, giving him a clear path. Torn walked forward, passing between 2 rows of kneeling soldiers. None of them moved. None of them spoke. It felt like a dream or a strange test. Inside the shelter, he placed the armored woman gently on the bed. He opened his supply box and grabbed a first aid kit. He didn't know if the kit would help, but it was all he had. Carefully, he removed her helmet. A hiss of air escaped. Under the armor was a woman, tall, strong, and calm. Even in rest, her skin was smooth and silver blue. Her hair, short and dark. She looked peaceful, even though her body was bruised. Torn wiped her forehead with a damp cloth. She stirred, but didn't wake. He connected a small translator device to the side of her helmet. It blinked, then hummed softly. A few moments later, her lips moved. "Where am I?" she whispered. Torn leaned in. "You fell. I found you. I brought you here. Her eyes opened bright, glowing softly. She looked at him, then round the room, then outside where the soldiers waited. You lifted me, she said quietly. Yes, why? Torn shrugged. You needed help. That's all. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she smiled faintly. You don't understand what you've done, she said, voice still weak. But you will. Torn didn't sleep that night. He sat near the armored woman Velra, watching her breathe. Sometimes her eyes opened. Sometimes she whispered in a strange language. And other times she simply lay still. Outside, the soldiers stayed where they were. They didn't move, didn't speak. They just guarded the shelter, silent like statues. Torn made some warm broth using old dried vegetables. He wasn't sure if she could eat it, but he wanted to try. He placed a small bowl next to her and waited in the soft morning light. Velra opened her eyes again. This time, she seemed more alert. She looked at the bowl, then at Torn. You made this, she asked. Torn nodded. It's not much, but it's warm. Velra sat up slowly. She was stiff, and her wounds still pained her. But she managed to take the bowl in both hands. She sipped the broth and looked surprised. It's comforting, she said. Torn smiled. Glad you think so. After a few more sips, Velra looked around the room. Her helmet lay on the table beside her. Her armor, cracked but still shining, gave off a quiet hum. My people, she said, are still outside? Yes, Torn replied. They came the moment I lifted you. They bowed. I don't know why. Velra placed the bowl aside and took a deep breath. Because you carried me, she said. And by doing so, you passed a test? Torn frowned. A test? Yes, she nodded. Our ancient code says, only the worthy may lift the commander in battle. To lift without command is to lead with heart. No one has done that for hundreds of years. Torn leaned back. I didn't. No, I just saw someone who needed help. Velra smiled slightly. That is why it matters. You didn't do it for power. You did it because it was right. That is rare. Torn rubbed the back of his neck. I'm just a scavenger. To them, Velra said, glancing at the soldiers outside. You are now something more. As the sun rose higher, a low hum echoed. Across the hills, Torn stepped outside and saw something new. More Veari ships were landing nearby, small crafts with smooth curves and glowing engines. Soldiers in black and silver armor stepped out in rows. They joined the others, lining up in perfect formation. One of them stepped forward taller than the rest, with sharp lines on his armor. He removed his helmet and spoke in a deep voice. I'm Orsek, he said, second to Commander Velra. Torn introduced himself simply. I'm Torn. Orsek looked him up and down. You lifted our commander. Yes, Torn said. You know what that means? Orsek asked. Torn shook his head. Not really. Orsek didn't smile. It means we follow you now, until our commander gives a new order. Torn didn't know what to say. I don't want command. That is not your choice anymore, Orsek replied firmly. Velra stepped out of the shelter then. Standing tall despite her wounds, her armor was still cracked, but she walked like a true leader. Orsek turned and knelt immediately. Commander, he said. Velra nodded. Rise. Orsek stood and looked between Velra and Torn. You approve of this human? He asked. Velra looked at Torn. He saved me. He carried me when others would have left. I do more than approve. Orsek's jaw tightened. He is not one of us. He is now, Velra said. Her voice was calm but firm. Honor does not wear only one skin. Torn listened, confused but quiet. This was not his world. But somehow, he had stepped into the center of it. Later that day, Velra and Torn sat outside the shelter while the soldiers worked to set up a base nearby. Tents rose, lights were placed, and food was prepared. The Veari moved like one body. Trained and disciplined, Velra asked Torn about Earth, about humans. He told her about rain, trees, oceans, and songs. He told her about old books, dusty libraries, and how people argued over silly things but still helped strangers when it mattered. Your people sound warm, Velra said. Torn chuckled. Sometimes, We can be difficult too. Velra looked at him. I want to understand your ways. Torin looked surprised. Why? Because you lifted me, she said again, softly. And in our world, that means something more than words can explain. As evening came, Velra stood before her army and raised her voice. This man Torin acted with courage and knowledge of what it meant to us. He saved me, not because he wanted glory, but because it was right from this day forward. He walks with us under protection and respect. The soldiers responded with a shout in one voice. A salute, not just to Velra but to Torin. He stood in silence, unsure how to feel. He didn't want to be a hero. He didn't even think he had done much. But deep inside, something had changed. Not just in them, but in him to dot as stars filled the night sky. Velra sat beside him and said, "This is only the beginning." Torin looked out across the glowing tents and the quiet desert. "I have a feeling," he said, "that you're right." Torin woke up early. The desert wind was cooler than usual, and the sky was filled with soft colors. Blue, orange, and a little pink stretched across the horizon. He stepped outside his small shelter and stretched his arms. All around him, the once empty desert had changed. It now looked like a living camp, full of activity. The Veyari soldiers moved with quiet speed. Some trained with weapons, others set up small watchtowers and polished their armor. Everything was neat, organized, and calm. Torin didn't know their language well, but they worked like a team that trusted each other. Velra sat near a flat rock, eyes closed, meditating. Her armor was still damaged, but she had cleaned it and adjusted the broken pieces. She looked strong again. Torin sat beside her and handed her a cup of warm tea. "Thank you," she said softly, opening her eyes. "You're healing fast." Torin said, "Our bodies are trained for it," Velra answered. "But your help made a difference." Torin nodded. "I'm still trying to understand what happened. I carried you, and now I'm someone important." Velra turned toward him. "You became part of the code." Torin frowned. "What is this code?" Velra picked up a small stone and drew a simple mark on the sand to curved lines around a circle. "This is the ancient symbol of the Shield Code. Long ago, our people were not united. We fought for control, for honor, for victory. But the founders made a rule. The one who carries a wounded commander with no promise of reward has the heart of a leader." "And you believe that?" Torin asked. Velra nodded. "I lived by it all my life. I just didn't think it would be fulfilled by a human." Torin gave a small smile. "I didn't do it for honor. That is exactly why it matters." As the sun rose, a Veyari soldier approached and saluted. Velra stood, and Torin followed. The soldier bowed slightly to Torin and said something in their language. Velra translated. "There's a visitor," she said. "A leader from another Veyari faction. His name is Zerl." Torin raised an eyebrow. "Friend or foe?" Velra's face grew serious. "That depends on how he feels about you." They walked to the edge of the camp where a sleek black ship had landed. Soldiers in darker armor stood around it, silent and still. A tall figure with red markings on his chest plate stepped forward. He removed his helmet and looked at Torin with sharp eyes. "I am Commander Zerl," he said in basic language. "You're the human who carried Velra." "I am," Torin replied simply. Zerl looked at Velra. "You allow this outsider to walk freely among our people?" Velra stood tall. He acted with courage and passed the code. "I owe him my life." Zerl stepped closer to Torin. "One action does not make a leader. I never asked to lead." Torin said calmly, "I only helped." Zerl narrowed his eyes. "That may be true, but others follow you now. Soldiers speak of you as if you were something more." Torin said nothing. Zerl looked at Velra again. "You were once a warrior of strength. Do not forget your place." Velra's voice was steady. "And you do not forget the code." Zerl turned and walked back to his ship. "Be careful," he said. "Some see your choice as a weakness." When he left, Velra turned to Torin. "That was a warning. I got that feeling," Torin said. Later, as evening came, Velra sat with Torin by the fire. The wind had picked up, blowing small clouds of dust across the camp. Velra looked thoughtful. "Zerl is powerful," she said, and proud. He does not accept change easily. Do you think he will attack? Torn asked. Velra nodded slowly. If he thinks I've broken tradition, he might. Some among his ranks already whisper against me. Torn poked at the fire with a stick. Why not tell them the truth? That I didn't know about your code. That I'm just a scavenger. Because, Velra said, you are no longer just a scavenger. Torn looked at her. I never asked for this, nor did I ask to fall from the sky, she said with a smile. They sat in silence for a while. Then Velra stood. There is something I want to show you, she said. She led Torn to a hidden chamber inside a nearby rock wall. There, behind a thick metal door, was a room filled with old weapons, scrolls, and statues. At the center was a tall pillar with glowing lines. This is the Heart Room, Velra said. It holds the history of our people. Only those marked by the shield code may enter. Torn looked around. Wide-eyed. Why bring me here? Because. You earned it, Velra said. She placed her hand on the pillar, and a soft hum filled the room. Then she stepped back. Now you try. Torn hesitated, then touched the pillar. The glow brightened, and the room filled with soft light. Symbols danced in the air. A deep voice echoed in the chamber, an old voice speaking in Veari language. Velra listened carefully, then translated. It says, the one who lives without, knowing leads with true heart. The stars will remember his steps. Torn took a step back. Overwhelmed, I don't understand all of this. You don't have to, Velra said gently. You just have to keep walking. They returned to camp as night fell. The stars above were bright, and the soldiers sat quietly in groups, sharpening tools and telling stories in their language. Torn sat near the fire alone, thinking. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was clear. He had become part of something far bigger than himself. The night passed quietly, but Torn couldn't sleep. Something didn't feel right. The wind had changed, and the stars above seemed to flicker in a strange pattern. He stood outside his shelter, looking out at the still camp. The Veari soldiers were resting in light shifts, as they always did. Some were on guard, but most had their helmets off and weapons beside them. The silence was peaceful but too perfect. Velra joined him just before sunrise. She had a serious look on her face. Her armor had been fully repaired with help from her team, and now it gleamed softly in the pale light. You feel it too, don't you? She asked. Torn nodded. Yes, like something is about to happen. Before she could answer, a sharp sound broke the silence. A low hum, followed by a sudden explosion near the edge of the camp. Flames lit up the rocks, and a dust cloud rose fast. The ground shook. Soldiers jumped to their feet, shouting orders in Veari language. We're under attack, Velra called out. Torn grabbed a tool from his belt. It wasn't a weapon, but it could cut metal, and that was better than nothing. Dark shapes moved quickly through the smoke, figures in heavy armor, carrying sharp energy weapons. They came from all sides, fast and quiet, using the early light to hide their numbers. They're not from your side, are they? Torn asked as they ducked behind a rock. No, Velra said. That's Zerl's faction. Torn's eyes widened. He actually attacked you? He warned us yesterday. We should have expected this. The battle started fast. Velra's soldiers rushed to defend the camp. Blue and red light flashes lit the rocks as weapons fired in every direction. Shouts echoed across the valley. Sparks flew. Shields clashed. The air smelled like burning dust and heat. Velra jumped into the fight, her sword in one hand and a small shield in the other. Her moves were smooth, practiced, and full of purpose. Even though she was still recovering, she moved like a storm, quick, sharp, and fearless. Torn tried to help. He stayed low, using his tool to cut through enemy weapons and disable their gear. When he could, he wasn't trained for this, but he used his brain. He created distractions. He jammed signals. He even used metal scraps to block a small tunnel, stopping more attackers from entering. Suddenly, he saw Velra stumble. One of Zerl's soldiers had struck her in the side. Her shield cracked, and she fell to one knee. Another enemy rushed toward her. Torn didn't think, he just ran. He reached her in time, grabbed a heavy rod from the ground, and swung it at the attacker. It hit hard, knocking the enemy back. Torn helped Velra up, holding her close. "You again," she said with a faint smile, even though her face was pale from the wound. "Yeah, it's becoming a habit," Torn replied, breathing hard. The soldiers around them saw it, Torn lifting her again, shielding her without hesitation. And just like before, something changed in their eyes. They shouted louder, pushed harder, and fought with more strength. Within minutes, the tide turned. Zerl's troops began to fall back. Some retreated. Others dropped their weapons. The ambush had failed. Velra's army stood strong, and this time, united around both her and Torn. After the smoke cleared and the last attackers were chased off, the soldiers gathered in the center of the camp. Velra was being treated for her wound by a medic, but she stood as soon as she could. Supported by Torn, Orcs, her second in command, stepped forward. He had seen the whole fight. He had seen Torn defend Velra with his own hands. For the first time, he gave Torn a respectful nod. "You saved her again," Orcs said quietly. Torn looked down. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Orcs said. "Not anyone. Many would have run. You stayed." Torn didn't reply. He didn't want praise. He had acted on instinct, not for glory. Later that day, Velra rested inside the shelter. Her wound was clean and healing. Thanks to advanced Veyari medicine, Torn sat nearby, holding a warm drink. "I think I'm starting to understand your people," he said. "Oh?" Velra asked, raising an eyebrow. "You fight hard, you protect your leaders, and you believe in actions more than words." Velra smiled. "That is true, but many of us have forgotten the meaning behind those actions. You reminded us." Outside, soldiers repaired the camp. Some added stronger defenses. Others built new towers. The atmosphere had changed. There was a new respect in the air, not just for Velra, but for the quiet human who kept standing up when it mattered. That evening, a small group of soldiers approached Torn. They placed their weapons down and knelt. One of them, a young fighter named Renor, spoke. "May we follow you as well?" he asked. "Not as commander, but as example." Torn was surprised. "I don't give orders." "We know." Renor said. "That's why we trust you." Torn looked at Velra, confused. She nodded softly. "They see your strength," she said. "Not in battle, but in heart." Torn didn't know what to say. He just nodded, and the soldiers rose. Proud and silent, the stars came out again, bright and clear. The battle was over, but something bigger had begun. Not a war, a change. And it all started. The sky was quiet again. The smoke from the battle had cleared, and peace had returned to the desert. But inside the camp, everything felt different. Torn could feel it. He wasn't just a visitor now. He had become part of something much bigger than himself. Velra was healing fast. Her wound had closed, and her armor was repaired again. She moved with purpose. But there was still a shadow on her face. The attack had shaken something inside her, not just pain, but doubt. Torn noticed it one evening as they sat beside the fire. He asked, "You've won battles before. Why does this one feel heavier?" Velra looked into the flames. "Because Zerl is not just a rival. He is part of our old council. He wants to take us backward." "Backward how?" Torn asked. "Back to fear. Back to division. Back to the time when our people believed only the strongest voice should lead," she replied. "But the true code teaches something else." Torn nodded. "And now, they're watching what we do next." Velra didn't speak for a moment. Then she said, "There's a place, an ancient chamber. The core of silence. It was built long ago by our founders. It doesn't speak, but it listens. It knows the truth in people's hearts." Torn raised an eyebrow. "And if it accepts you," Velra continued, "it proves your place. No one can argue then, not Zerl, not the council, not even the old traditions." Torn blinked. "Me? But I'm not a leader." Velra looked at him with calm eyes. "You are. You just don't wear it like armor." The next morning, they left the camp with a small team. Velra, Torn, and a few trusted guards traveled through narrow canyons and over tall dunes. The journey took half a day. As they walked, Velra explained more about the core. It was hidden. For a reason, she said. It doesn't work with tiles or force. It only responds to truth. They finally reached a large rock wall shaped like a curved claw. Velra placed her hand on a hidden panel. A door opened silently, revealing a long tunnel made of smooth stone and glowing lines. Inside, the air was cool and still. They stepped into a large chamber filled with symbols on the walls. At the center was a raised platform, with a strange crystal-like machine on top. It was tall, silent, and pulsing with soft light. "This is it," Velra said. Torn walked slowly toward it. The machine didn't look like a weapon or a tool. It looked like something alive but asleep. "What do I do?" he asked. "Just place your hand on it," Velra said. "If it sees your heart clearly, it will respond." Torn stepped closer. He felt unsure, but he didn't hesitate. He reached out and placed his hand on the crystal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the room filled with light. Soft blue waves floated around him. The walls lit up with ancient writing. The platform under his feet began to glow. A deep hum filled the chamber, not loud, but strong, like it came from the planet itself. Velra gasped. Torn looked around. "What's happening?" Velra's voice was quiet. "It's speaking." Symbols floated in the air. The core was showing them images. Torn lifting Velra, protecting her in the battle, speaking kindly to the soldiers, choosing peace even when others wanted war. Then the images changed. They showed Velra too standing beside Torn, trusting him, protecting her people with courage and calm. The lights dimmed slowly. The crystal stopped glowing, but a soft symbol remained floating above it. It was the same mark Velra had drawn in the sand days ago, the shield code. Velra stepped forward. "It has accepted you." Torn turned toward her. "So, what does that mean?" "It means no one can question your heart," she said. "You are now marked by the core." Just then, footsteps echoed through the chamber. Zerl entered, followed by a few of his guards. He stared at the glowing symbol, then at Torn. "So it is true," Zerl said coldly. "The core accepted." A human. Velra stood between them. "You have your answer now. You must stop this fight." Zerl's eyes narrowed. "That machine is old. It doesn't understand today's world. It understands hearts," Velra replied, "and it saw Torn's." Zerl stepped forward, but his guards didn't follow. They stayed behind, unsure now. "You still believe this outsider is our future?" Zerl asked sharply. "I believe in what he stands for," Velra said, "and so does the core." Torn stepped beside her. He didn't speak loudly or act proud. He simply said, "I didn't come to lead. I just wanted to help someone who needed it." The room went quiet. Zerl looked at his own hands, then back at Torn. He didn't speak again. He just turned around and walked out of the chamber. Back at the camp, news spread quickly. The core had accepted Torn. Soldiers stood taller. Tensions lowered. Even Orsek, who had once doubted him, gave him a respectful bow. That night, Velra and Torn stood side by side, looking up at the stars. "You didn't just earn their respect," Velra said softly. "You reminded them what honor really means." Torn nodded. "I didn't do anything special." "Yes," she replied. "That's what made it special." The calm after the core's acceptance was brief. The camp buzzed with new energy, but the shadows of old rivalries lingered. Torn and Velra both knew that peace was fragile. Zerl's refusal to accept the core's judgment meant trouble was coming. For days, Velra's army trained harder. The soldiers studied new tactics, blending old Veari fighting skills with clever moves Torn shared from Earth. Though Torn was not a warrior, his ideas about surprise and creativity brought fresh hope. Velra watched him closely. She admired his calm, his patience, and the quiet strength he carried. One evening, while the camp gathered around fires, a messenger arrived. He carried a sealed message from the old council. The letter demanded Velra's surrender and Torn's exile. If they refused, the council would send an army far larger than any before. Velra stood before her people, reading the message aloud. The soldiers listened, their faces hardening. Torn stepped beside her. "We don't have to fight them," he said quietly. There might be a way to solve this without war. Velra looked at him. How? By showing them strength and mercy. If we defeat them, but spare their lives, they may see we lead with heart, not hate. Velra nodded. You speak wisely, but not everyone agreed. Orsek, her second in command, came forward. This is war. We must crush them before they crush us. Torn shook his head. Violence only creates more violence. We can end this now, but only if we show we are different. Velra raised her hand. We will prepare for battle, but we will not start it. Days passed. The tension grew. Then, on a cloudy morning, the council's army arrived. Thousands of soldiers marched forward, their armor shining cold and dark. Torn felt the weight of the moment. This was no longer a test. This was war. Velra and her commanders met the council's generals in a narrow valley. The two armies faced each other, waiting for the signal. Suddenly, Torn stepped forward. He raised his voice so both sides could hear. I do not want this fight, he said, but I will stand with Velra to defend her and her people. If you wish to fight, we will meet you with courage. But I ask you, before blood is shed, look to what we have built. Look to the future, not the past. A silence fell. Soldiers on both sides looked at each other, unsure. Then Velra spoke. We do not seek war, but we will not run from it. The generals nodded. A long battle was about to begin. The clash was fierce. Steel and energy lit the valley as swords met shields. Soldiers shouted, ran, and fought with all their strength. But Velra's forces moved with unity and trust. Torn's ideas helped them outsmart the council's generals. Small teams used the rocky ground to hide and surprise the enemy. Others formed strong defenses, protecting the wounded and keeping the line steady. In the middle of the battle, Velra found herself facing Zerl. His eyes burned with anger, and his sword struck fast. Velra parried and moved quickly, but she was tired from the long fight. Just as Zerl raised his blade for a final strike, Torn jumped between them. He caught Zerl's sword with a thick branch, breaking its path. Enough, Torn shouted. This fight ends now. Zerl sneered. You have no place here, human. I have a place. Torn said firmly, and I'm here to stop this. Velra, step forward. Zerl, your fight is with me, but it ends here. We will not destroy our people with hate. Zerl looked at Velra, then at Torn. For a moment, anger flashed in his eyes. Then he lowered his sword. This is not over, he said quietly, but I will wait. The battle stopped. Soldiers lowered their weapons. The valley fell silent, except for heavy breathing. Velra and Torn looked at each other. They had survived the storm, but they knew peace would need more than a battle won. That night, the camp gathered again. Velra spoke softly. We fought not to destroy, but to protect. This is the path of the Shield Code. We fight for honor, but we live for peace. Torn smiled. I'm proud to stand with you. The soldiers cheered. Many came to Torn, shaking his hand and nodding with respect. Velra placed a hand on Torn's shoulder. You led when you did not want to. You lifted when no one asked. That is true strength. Torn looked up at the stars. He felt tired, but hopeful. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, he believed they could shape it together. The sun rose slowly over the desert, painting the sky with soft pinks and golds. The camp was calm now. The battle was over, and the valley was quiet except for the gentle sounds of life returning. Torn woke early. He stepped outside his small shelter and looked around. The soldiers were busy cleaning their gear and repairing the camp. There was a new feeling in the air, a sense of hope, but also a quiet respect. Velra came to stand beside him. Her armor gleamed in the morning light, and her face showed both strength and peace. It's time, she said softly. Torn nodded. What now? Velra smiled gently. Now, we rebuild, together. They walked to the center of the camp where the soldiers had gathered. Velra raised her voice so all could hear. Our people have faced old fears and new challenges, she said. We have fought with courage, but we must remember why we fight. Not for power, not for pride, but for the future we want to build. She turned to Torn. This man did not seek honor or command. He only did what was right. And by doing so, he reminded us of what true leadership means. The soldiers cheered. They knelt before Velra, and Torn, not out of fear, but out of respect. Orsek, Velra's second in command, stepped forward. He looked at Torn and spoke clearly. You have taught us that strength is more than weapons and armor. It is kindness, courage, and heart. We are honored to stand with you. Torn felt shy but proud. I didn't do this alone. You all showed me what it means to be a leader. Velra smiled. Leadership is not about one person. It is about all of us. After the ceremony, Torn and Velra spoke quietly by the fire. You changed their hearts, Velra said, not by fighting harder, but by showing you cared. Torn looked up at the stars. I never wanted to lead. I just wanted to help. And that is why you were chosen, Velra said. Because true leaders lift others without expecting anything in return. Torn nodded slowly. I want to go home soon. Velra's eyes softened. Your home will always be part of you, but you have a home here now too. Over the next weeks, Torn helped the Veari rebuild. He taught them stories from Earth about kindness, hope, and peace. The soldiers listened and smiled. The camp grew stronger, but gentler. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Torn packed his few belongings. He had made a decision. Velra found him outside, ready to leave. Are you sure? She asked. Yes, Torn replied. I need to go back, but I will never forget you or your people. Velra nodded. You will always be welcome. They shook hands, strong and warm. Torn climbed into his old ship, looking back one last time. The soldiers stood watching, their faces proud but sad as the engines roared and the ship lifted. Torn smiled. He had started as a simple scavenger, but he had become a part of something greater. A story told by stars and hearts. He flew home, knowing that sometimes the greatest power is the choice to lift others up without wanting anything in return.